parshios. When we say inner parshios, we're referring to the two parshios that are in the two middle sections, and you make them outer parshios. Or you take outer parshios and you make them inner parshios. But if you mix up inner parshios or you mix up outer parshios, there's no problem. Kamashlan, the Gemara says no. Once you go ahead and you deviate and you change the proper order of the parshios regardless, ultimately the tefillin will be pasul. So we'll say, so again, we're left off ultimately with the machlokes regarding the placement of the parashos, machlokes Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, but both Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam will agree in their respective shitos that if you do go ahead and you mix up the parashos, you invalidate the tefillin. Good. Right. Barbos, I just want to point out, I'm not doing it justice, obviously, because we're doing this fast, but this machlokes Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam by tefillin is a very exciting machlokes, because everyone knows about the two different types of tefillin. The truth is, there are many more than two different types of tefillin. Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam are just the most high-profile machlokes when it comes to tefillin. But there are many machloksim when it comes to how to properly go ahead and put together tefillin. But this machlokes Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam is probably the most famous one. Rashi telling me ultimately again from right to left, Kadesh v'haya kivyacha shma v'haya imshamawa. Rabbeinu Tam telling me from right, Kadesh v'haya kivyacha. Then go to the left, Shema, and then Vayayim Shema. Good. But Amrav Chanana Amarav. Titura the tefillin halacha l'Moshe miSinai. Both said the titura of the tefillin are halacha l'Moshe miSinai. Now, what's the titura? See, that both say we often call the entire, we'll call it tefillah, the entire box. We call it tefillin, or we call it the bias. But in fact, it's not true. The square, the cube that sits on top is called the ketzitza, right? The cube sits on a base. That base is called the titura. So Rav says the obligation to have a titura is halacha l'Moshe miSinai. Remember again, Abosai, the totality of the mitzvah of tefillin is encapsulated in the words ukshartam li'os al yadecha, right? Vayul totafos b'neinecha. A very nondescript mitzvah that doesn't tell me anything except that I'm placing something on my arm and something on my head. And even on my head, I only know I'm placing it between my eyes. So remember, again, the details of the mitzvah are filled in by the halachos l'Moshe miSinai. See, the Gemara says over here, so tefillin requires a titura, that's halacha l'Moshe miSinai. Amar Abaye, ma'avarta the tefillin halacha l'Moshe miSinai. So the ma'avarta, we'll say, what's the ma'avarta? So the ma'avarta, remember again, is if you have the ketzitza, you have the cube sits on a base, that's called the titura. On the back of the titura, there's like an extension, right? So if you notice again, tefillin doesn't sit like centered on the base. There's a base, but the base extends backwards. What's in that base? That's the area that the ritzua goes through. That area that the ritzua goes through is called the ma'avarta. It's a logical name, right? The ma'avar. It's like a bridge. It's the ma'avar. So that's the ma'avarta. That's halacha l'Moshe miSinai. V'amra Abaye says, shin shel tefillin halacha l'Moshe miSinai. The obligation to have a shin, ultimately again, on the tefillin shel rosh, is a halacha l'Moshe miSinai. I will say, in addition to that, the obligation or the concept that one of those shins is three-pronged and one is four is also part of the halacha l'Moshe miSinai. V'tzarach shiagi V'amra Abaye shin shel tefillin halacha l'Moshe miSinai. Well, so not only that, the obligation, the grooves, this is talking about in the tefillin shel rosh. In the tefillin shel rosh, the grooves have to extend down all the way to the stitching. Rav Dirin Adamar, Kevan de Minkar, Lo Tzarach. Rav Dirin Adas said, no, it's not true. As long as the groove is recognizable, even if it doesn't extend down to the stitching, ultimately the tefillin will still be kosher. V'amar Abaye, high kilfo the tefillin tzarach lemivdikei. The dilma is beiri usa ubaina ksiva tama valaka. Abai comes along and says, when the sofer goes ahead and writes tefillin, before he writes tefillin, he has to thoroughly inspect the cloth. Why? Because maybe there's a hole in the cloth, and it's going to turn out, therefore, that one of the letters is going to be incomplete. And if one of the letters is incomplete, ultimately, the tefillin will be pasul. Where do we get that from? Because the pasuk used the word lashon of uksav tam, which we understand to be a contraction of two words, ksiva tama. It has to be a complete writing. So therefore, Rav Dirin Arda says, no, lo tzarech, you don't have to inspect the cloth, and I'll tell you why. Kulmasa badikla. But says actually a very beautiful statement. The kulmos, the quill, ultimately of the sofer, does the bedika, does the inspection of the piece of parchment. But say, how so? Because what's going to happen when the sofer is writing the tefillin, if there's a hole in the parchment, what's going to happen? His quill is going to get stuck in the hole. So ultimately, again, there's no need for him to do any additional inspection because the writing itself is the inspection. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, this is really very exciting Gemaras. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Ritzuos shchoros halacha l'Moshe miSinai. We'll say black ritzuos, that your ritzuos have to be black. That's ultimately again halacha l'Moshe miSinai. So Gemara says, okay, let's analyze this. Meisvei tefillin in kosher osa ela b'minan. So we'll say, so the Brisa says as follows: tefillin can only be tied with their own min, which we'll say is another way of saying that ritzuos have to be made out of leather. That ritzuos have to be made ultimately again out of the same material that tefillin themselves are made. Tefillin are made from the hide of a kosher animal. Ritzuos have to be made from the hide of a kosher animal. But yet, when it comes to color, bein yerokos, bein shcharos, bein levanos, but you can make them green, you can make them black, you can make them white. One exception, adumos lo yeaseh, you shouldn't make them red, mipnei gnai v'davar acher, because of degradation and something else. So Rashi points out, what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Adumos lo yasem mipnei gnai, shemayomru gardanhu umidam chatatav nitzbu v'adim artzuos. People will say that maybe the guy has wounds or scabs, and the reason it got red was because the tefillin made him bleed. So it looks disgusting if it's red. What's the davar acher? Davar acher, the Gemara says, is shemer yomru ishto nida ba'al v'nisbu dam. And if it's red, other davar acher, as people will say, maybe what? Maybe he had relations with his wife, and she was a nida, and that's how the tefillin got all red. So as I was thinking about this, like, who would ever, like, it's such a, but Elamai Bosai, you see, people, you learn a lot from this. Number one, that a lot of times our minds are not where they should be. That's number one, which is probably the primary lesson. And number two, I will say, is that sometimes people look very disparagingly upon the other. So there's a chisaron ultimately again ben adam lechavero, and there's a chisaron ben adam lemakom. There's a chisaron in terms of where are my thoughts throughout the day. What do I think about? What am I preoccupied with? And ultimately, how do I look upon the other? So we'll say, so this Gemara indicates over here that you can make tefillin, you can make the ritzuos out of any color you want. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda, Maise betamido. So the Gemara tells a story. So the Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Masa b'tamidosh Rabbi Akiva, she'ekosha tefillah b'lshon shel tchelas. So Rabbi Yehuda says there was once a Maisa with the Talmud of Rabbi Akiva who made his ritzuos out of tchelas. They both say, what does he mean out of tchelas? It means he made his ritzuos out of wool, not out of leather, out of tchelas dyed wool. V'lo amar lo davar, and Rabbi Akiva didn't say anything to his Talmud. If she'oso tzaddik ra talmido v'lo michabo, could it be that the tzaddik saw his Talmud do something wrong and he didn't say anything? Amar lo hein lo ra oso. You're right, Rabbi Akiva never knew about this. Vim ra oso lo hayamanicho. Had Rabbi Akiva known about this, he would not have allowed the Talmud to put on tefillin like that. Maaseh b'Horkanus b'nosh Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus. Both said there was ultimately again. There was a story with Horkanus, the son of Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus. She'kosher tefillah b'lashon shel argaman. He used to put his tefillin on with what? With argaman is purple wool. V'lo amar lo davar. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus never said anything to his son. Efshar oso tzadik. We'll say we're at Lamed Hamad Aleph, right across from Tosfos Dishin. Could it be ultimately again that the tzaddik saw his son doing something wrong and he didn't say anything? And I will say the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva brings this down. It's actually yesterday's parak in Hilchos Tshuva that the Rambam discusses this idea that a parent who sees their child doing something wrong, and ultimately again doesn't say anything, it's an abdication of parental responsibility. So could it be that Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus sees his son putting on tefillin with lashon shel argaman and he doesn't say anything? Amrulo hein lo ra oso. This is actually very interesting. He didn't see him. It's quite possible that at this point in time, Horkanus was already an adult. So just Rabbi Eliezer just didn't see him and he didn't realize what he was doing. Vim ra oso lo haya manicho. And ultimately, again, if he did see him, he would have said something. So we'll see from here. So we have a problem. Because on one hand, the Brisa seemed to indicate that you could go ahead and make the tefillin out of any color you want. You just have to what? You just have to make it out of leather. We have these two stories over here indicating that it also has to be out of leather. Katani miha, ben yurokos, ben shchoros, ben levanos. But we'll say, but remember, the Brisa said before that the ritzuos have to be shchoros, have to be black. From here we see that what? It could be any color with one exception, which was red. To which Gemara says, so what's the answer? Lo kasha kan bifnim kami bachutz. Both sides, one is talking about the ritzua on the outside or in the inside versus the outside. When the Gemara says that the ritzuos have to be black, that is a reference to the visible, external part of the ritzua that's visible. The underside of the ritzua could be any color you want. Any color you want. Even bifnim, ma'ginai, but I don't understand. Then why can't the inside be red as well? In other words, what's the ginai? What's the problem if it's red? To which the Gemara says, even bifnim, ma'ginai v'tavra acharika, zimnan demes hapichinai, because we'll say sometimes what happens, your ritzuas flip. So if your ritzuas flip, you can't make it red. So we'll say, so bottom line, halacha l'maisa, this is how the Shulchan Aruch paskins. The ritzuos must be black on the external side. On the underside, at Shulchan Aruch paskins, you can make them any color you want, except for red. That's how the Shulchan Aruch paskins. We'll say, you should just know, we can't get into it now, but there is a newer thing now, that they make ritzuas that are black on both sides. Now the maila of that is that if your ritzuas flip over, you're okay, because it's black on both sides. There's much written in contemporary halachic literature decrying this practice, not happy with it. For a simple reason, many of the posts can quote the idea, "Bipnei sha'ata motzi laz al harishonin." We didn't make tefillin like this for who knows how long. Meaning, Kali, so we'll say, again, I want to point out, it's not the pshat like there's new science available that you can make ritzuas black on both sides. You can make ritzuas black on both sides 500 years ago also. This same way you make black on one side, you can make it black on the other side also. Dafka, it wasn't done. So it's an interest, this is mamish unfolding now. So again, it's available, and certainly again from a halachic perspective, not to have to worry about if your ritzuas flip over or not. Certainly one less thing on your mind, but it's just interesting to see about this concept that if something wasn't done for such a long time, so is it the best idea to introduce it or not? Okay, just making you aware of the issue. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says as follows: Tana, tefillin merubos, halacha l'Moshe Sinai. That tefillin have to be square is a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Ora papa, betafran uba'alachson." That's true again. I will say the stitching has to be squared, and the alachson, which means the diagonal of the cube, also has to be perfectly reflective of the fact that it's a square. Let's say that this supports this. If somebody makes their tefillin round, it's a sakana. The both say the Gemara says ve'in ba mitzvah, and you have not fulfilled the mitzvah in any way. Amra papa masnisin da'avida kiyamaguza. The Mishnah is talking about over here if a person were to go ahead and make it like a nut. So we'll say, so the idea is, Rashi points out if it's perfectly round, it also won't be kasha, but it's not sakana. If it's more shaped like a nut, not only is it not kasha, but it's a sakana as well. The concern ultimately was perforating the skull. So the Gemara says, Amar Avhuna, tefillin kolzman shepnei tabla kayemes ksheros. So we'll say, so now Rav Huna comes along and says that tefillin, as long as the tavla, if you look at Rashi, Rashi says, Tavla ze'or shel batim. As long as the external part of the tefillin is intact, even if some of the inside is crumbling, ultimately, again, the tefillin is still kosher. Now, what does this mean? So the Gemara says, like this. I'm sorry. So we'll say, so again, Tavla is a reference to the external tzura, the external form of the tefillin. So as long as the external form of the tefillin is intact, even if there's some type of crumbling going on the inside, the tefillin will still be kosher. Rav Chisda Amar, nifseku shtein ksheros, shalosh psulos. So Rav Chisda says that's true only if up to two of the inside walls. This is not the shel rosh. We have different compartments. We'll say, let's say from the outside the tefillin is totally intact, but on the inside, some of the divider walls are crumbling. So Rav Chisda says if up to two of them are crumbling a bit, the tefillin are still kosher. Shalosh psulos. Once you have three internal walls, ultimately again the tefillin will be possible. Furthermore, Rav said, When is two crumbling still going to be kosher? Only if they're not two walls next to each other. Aval zeh kineged zeh psulos. But if they're next to each other, it'll be pasul. V'zeh kineged zeh nami lo amran ela becharata. Furthermore, we're going to both say when we say that zeh kineged zeh, right? If they're next to each other, ultimately again they'll be pasul. That's only with brand new tefillin. Aval ba'atikta leslan ba. But by old tefillin, even if they're next to each other and they crumble, the tefillin will still be kosher. We'll say, what's the logic there? Because if it's new tefillin and it's crumbling on the inside, that means what? The hide was never good. If the hide was never good, Rashi points out, it's as if it's not in existence, and therefore the tefillin are pasul. If it's old, then the tefillin were good. It's just now this is the wear and tear. So this is actually an interesting distinction. So ultimately, again, what we're saying over here is the crumbling of two inner walls of the shalrosh could compromise the tefillin, but only in new tefillin. In older tefillin, even if it's two walls next to each other and they're crumbling, the tefillin ultimately, again, will still be kosher. More than two walls crumbling, even in old tefillin, ultimately compromise the tefillin. Amar Abaye Rabbi Yosef, Hechi dami charet and hecha dami atikta. But how do you tell what kind of tefillin is new, what kind of tefillin is old? Amar le kohecha ki misli be bishilcha v'hadir chalim atikta v'idach chareta. To which the Gemara says, any time that you go ahead and you were to pull the tefillin, pull the hide, right, of the tefillin, and what? It would go ahead and return back to its original form. That's called atikta. That's called old tefillin. Otherwise, again, if by stretching it out, it doesn't return to its original form, that's called new tefillin. Amud beis. V'inami, kolechi dichi matli ba b'masna asya abasrei charta v'idach atikta. What's the other possibilities? Take a look at the top Rashi, Lamed Hamid Beis. Rashi says, Kisha'ochis adam beretzuat tluya bahen, va'asu tefillin abasrei, ve'ina nitkin charta, v'idach shenitkin atikta. The other possibility I will say is ultimately, again, if you were to hold the tefillin in your hand, that people were to pull it in two different directions. Ultimately, again, if it would stretch out, that's new. If it doesn't stretch out, it's not new. Okay, these are just, but say, obviously, a lot of these simanim are also very much dependent on, not dependent is the wrong word, reflective of how they were actually making tefillin. Obviously, tefillin, both say, if you were to see Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillin, I'm sure that in many ways they would not look like the tefillin we have today. Obviously, in many ways they would. But even though you don't have to go back to Moshe Rabbeinu, even if you look at tefillin from 100 years ago, right, the tefillin look different. They just look different. The paint looks different. The leather is often different. The tzura is often different. So obviously these ways that they're trying to show the difference between old and new tefillin are also reflective of how they're making tefillin. Abai Havi Yosef We'll say Lamed Ham and base third lie down. Listen to this. So Abai was sitting before Rav Yosef. If siklei ritzua the tefilli. So we'll say what happens. Abai's ritzua ripped. His ritzua ripped. So what did he want to say? Amarle, ma'al limiktre. So Abai says to Rav Yosef, can I sew it? I want to sew my tefillin back together. Amarle, you can't do that. He says, ukshartem ksiv shetei kshira. I'm sorry. Actually, limiktre doesn't mean sew. Limiktre means to tie. He wants to go ahead and tie the tefillin back together, not sew. We'll see sew in just a moment. Can I tie them? Let me just knot the two ends of the ritzua together. Shalom Yisrael. To which Rav Yosef said, which Amar Lei Ukshartam Ksiv Shetei Kshiratama. No, Ksharta will say just like Ksavta means Ksivatama, complete writing. Ksharta means it has to be a complete tying of the tefillin, which I will say is another way of saying that what? That the ritzuas themselves can't be knotted individually, but rather again there has to be a complete tying of the ritzua onto the bias. Therefore, if it rips, you can't knot the two ends together. Amali Ravacha, Rav Yosef, Ravashi, Malam Mitvere, Va'ayle Litvira Lego. So okay, so fine. I understand I can't knot it. Can I sew it? Now I will say the way they're talking about sewing it is as follows. You're sewing it in a way that the stitch won't be visible from the outside. So if you take the two ends, essentially, you're going to take a little bit off both ends of the ritzua, tie it underneath the ritzua, so that when looking on top of the ritzua will look smooth and uniform. So the stitching, because obviously based on what we just said before, if the stitching is going to be visible, then what? It's not going to be good. That's no different than knotting it. What if I could stitch it together, but the stitching will be invisible? Amrle, suppose say this is amazing. Amr says to him, Pok chazi ma'amadavar. Why don't you go see what the Jewish people do? In other words, we'll say, to which Rabbi Yosef responds, go look at what people do. Do people do that or not? And obviously the answer is people don't do that. So the fact that people don't do that indicates that the Masorah for Klal Yisrael is that what? We don't stitch together our Ritzuos. Amazing. So much to say about each of these things, but this incredible idea that Rav Yosef says, Pok chazima amadavar. Go and see what your people do. Amra Papa, Gardume Ritzuos Ksheros. Both say this is actually interesting. So Gardume Ritzuos, we'll say Gardum literally is a stump. Ritzuos stumps. What are Ritzuos stumps? Take a look at Rashi. Gardume Ritzuos. Masha tola min ha-Ritzuos la'achar shenis kashru barosh. Im nivsak me'osan shirayim v'nishtayru gardumen ksherin. Garduma hanu shirayim. So listen to this. This is talking about the straps which come down from the shorosh. So after you have the knot in the back of the shorosh, there are straps that come out of the shorosh. Those are called gardumim or shirayim. Let's say they get cut off. How much of that do you need in order for the tefillin to be kosher? So the Gemara says, Amarav Papa Gardume Ritzuos Ksheros. So Papa seems to say that as long as any amount is left, it's kosher. V'lav mil sihi. It's not true. Mida Amri b'nei Rabbi Chia Gardume Tcheles v'Gardume Ezov Ksherin. So say when it comes ultimately again to Tcheles, so Gardume Tcheles, which we'll say is the case of where your tzitzis, Tcheles of the tzitzis gets cut off and there's only a little bit left, or Gardume Ezov, right? The Ezov we'll say is by the Para Aduma Ksherin. As long as there's something left of these items, they'll be kosher. Hasamhu de tashmishe mitzvah ninhu. That's ultimately again because these items are what's called tashmishe mitzvah. They're utensils for the performance of a mitzvah. Aval hacha de tashmishe kiddusha ninhu. No, lo. Rabbi saying in this case over here, because these are items that are called tashmishe kiddusha, which means ultimately again they serve service items. They serve kiddusha items. Lo. Rabbi saying we're going to see what that means in just a moment. Maybe having shirayim is not enough. Michlal de Israbosai. What we're saying over here is, for Ritzuos, having just a little bit left over will not be enough. In other words, Michlal de Islu Shiura. That ultimately, again, I'll say there is a shear for the amount of Ritzua that has to be left after the knot of the Shel Rosh. The Kama Shiurayu. So how much do you need? Or what is the shear of the Ritzua that has to hang down? Amrai Barchama Amrish Lakish. Ad etzba tsereda. So we'll say Reish Lakish gives this shear that's called between the etzba and tsereda. Now there's a machlokis as to what that means. Rav Kahana machvi kafuf. Rav Kahana said that is the amount of space in between the index and middle fingers. Right? Etzba tsereda he understands is index and middle fingers. So this much, right? This much space is how much ritzu you have to have left. Ravashi machvi. Ravashi machli pashat. So Ravashi says it's the amount in between what? The index finger and the thumb. So we'll say which is obviously a larger shear. So again, here's what everybody's agreeing on. What everyone's agreeing on is that halacha lamaisa, there is a shear for the amount of ritzua that comes off the shel rosh. What they're disagreeing about is how much. Ultimately, again, now everyone seems to be agreeing to the position of Reish Lakish, which is ad etzbot sreida. Their machlokes just is how much is ad etzbot sreida. So the Gemara goes weiter. Rav Katerluhu Pashit Vishadi. So we'll say now the Gemara goes. Rabba Katerluhu Pashit Vishadi. So we'll say Rabba would go ahead and Rashi says over here, Rabba Kishamaniach Tefillin Kashalei Bereishei V'shiyari Haritzuos Pashit V'shadi Lahu V'tolin Al Kasefo Me'achoros. We'll say this is actually very interesting. What Rabba would do is Rabba would go ahead and after he would tie the knot of the shorosh, he would allow the extra Ritzuos to hang down his back. He would put it down his back. Meaning he wouldn't drape it over his shoulders. So the Gemara says, Rav Achar bar Yaakov Kater Umaslis lahu. So Rav Achar bar Yaakov, after he would tie the knot of the shorosh, he would braid the remainder of the Ritzuos. Mar braid Ravna Avid Kididan. Mar braid Ravna does what we do. Rashi says, what is it that we do? We take the excess part of the Ritzu of the shorosh and we drape it down in front of us. Amrav Hidrei Drashua Bashilas Mishmei Derav Kesher Shal Tefillin Halacha LaMoshe Misinai. So we'll say, so Rav Shila said the name of Rav that the Kesher of Tefillin itself is a Halacha LaMoshe Misinai. And I will say now what's interesting about this is as follows, which is that although it's a halacha l'Moshe Misinai, clearly there's a machlokes about what the halacha l'Moshe Misinai is. Is it the square? Is it the dalid? Some say the square is a double dalid. But it's interesting because not too often do you find halachos l'Moshe Misinai which themselves are subject to dispute, yet this one is. Amrav Nachman, v'navehen lebar. Both say v'navehen lebar literally means they're beauteous to the outside. What does that mean? Look at Rashi. V'navehen lebar, Hashem yanira mibachotz. The idea over here is that the knot has to be visible on the outside. Has to be visible. This is talking about the knot of the shalrosh. So Ravashi So Ravashi was sitting before Marzutra. Is hapcha le ritzua de tefillin, and his ritzua became overturned. Amar le lo savar mar v'navein lemar. Do you not hold that the beauty of the tefillin has to be right side up, has to be visible on the outside? Amarle lava data. He said, "I'm sorry, I didn't realize." I will say it was an interesting thing. Sometimes you can't read into every single thing that happens to a person. So here again, what's interesting about this is, Ravashi is sitting there before Marzutra, and Ravashi's tefillin becomes overturned. So Marzutra understands that Ravashi is making a statement. Ravashi says, "I'm not making a statement. My tefillin just happened to overturn. The Rizua is overturned." Incredible idea. So it goes like to So the pasuk says, and the nations of the world will see that the name of God is called upon you and they will fear you. So we'll say, what does this refer to? Tanya, Rebbe Elazar Gadol Omer, Elu Tefillin Shel Barosh. Ultimately, again, this refers to Shalrosh Tefillin. That's the tefillin that the Amei Aretz, that the nations of the world will be able to see. Vasiros yes kapai, vera'isi yes achorai. Kadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe Rabbeinu asks to see God. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I will remove my hand and you will see my back, or you will see me from behind. Ultimately, again, it tells us that what did Moshe Rabbeinu see of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? He saw the Ribono Shel Olam's kesher of his shel rosh. An incredibly beautiful idea. Amar Rav Yehuda, kesher shel tefillin tzarich shei lamala, kadei sheyisrael lamala v'lo lamata. Rav Yehuda ultimately says that what? The kesher tefillin of Klal Yisrael has to be lamala, which also means, Rashi says, begova harosh olamata b'tzavar, that the knot of the shalosh should not be positioned on the neck, rather it should be positioned on the head, the bottom of the head, but the head nevertheless. Why? Kadesha Yisrael lamala v'lo lamata, symbolic of the fact that Klal Yisrael should be on top and not below. V'zark shei klape pnim, and the knot of the shalosh should be opposite the face of the individual. Kadesha Yisrael lifnim v'lo la'achar. In order that Klal Yisrael ultimately again should be in front and not behind. Right? So we have to stop over here for today. Shkoyach again. These beautiful sugis continue through Shabbos as well. I recorded the parsha thought. Moshe already posted it last night on the WhatsApp. Shkoyach, a good Shabbos. Tomorrow morning, Daf Yomi on Shabbos. This